The old man on the shelter bunk was invisible, until I admitted I'd lost everything to a family that only calls for money. I didn't know he was my grandfather, missing for 30 years, or that he controlled their entire city. This morning, they demanded I sell my house to save my sister. Tonight, he offered me a leather portfolio. Justice, he asked, or silence. My name is Olivia Green. I am 29 years old, and for the last 4 years, I have been a clinical specialist at North Star Biomech here in Ohio. It is precise work. I control trial parameters. I manage data integrity. I am good at it because I am organized. I am reliable, and I do not miss details. These are the same qualities that have defined my weekends for the last 2 years. I live 25 minutes away from my parents' house. It is a distance that seems perfectly calibrated for convenience, which is to say, their convenience, for the past 2 years. Saturday has not been a day of rest. It is a line item on my budget of time, allocated entirely to them. I arrive around 10 a.m., I cook lunch for everyone, I clean the kitchen after. I usually do a load or two of their laundry, and I watch my nieces while my older sister, Marla, manages her online business from the dining room table. Marla is 33. She sells curated vintage home goods, a business defined by chaotic highs and terrifying lows. Her 2 daughters are high energy, constantly moving, but they are sweet kids. I do love them, but my role in their lives has long since shifted from aunt to unpaid childcare. This Saturday was different, or at least, it was supposed to be. The air was thick with the smell of my mom's pot roast, a smell I usually associate with comfort, but today it just felt heavy. The kids were running loops around the sofa. Marla was frantically typing on her laptop, her face tight with concentration. I had been holding the news for a week, waiting for the right moment. I finally just said it. I wanted to let everyone know I got the promotion, I said, my voice cutting through the noise slightly. I waited. My father was watching the golf pregame show. My mother was slicing bread. Marla's fingers never stopped moving. It's the senior clinical lead position, I continued, louder this time. It's a big step up. The thing is, it requires a move. I'm transferring to the High Mesa office in Colorado. Nothing. Not one head turned. It was as if I had just announced the weather forecast for a different continent. A second later, Marla shrieked, "Yes, closed, got it." She threw her hands up. "Mom, Dad, I just closed that interior decorator in Austin, $2,300, today." Suddenly, the room erupted. My dad muted the TV. My mom dropped the bread knife and rushed over to hug Marla. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful. See, I told you it would work out." My announcement evaporated, replaced by the bright, loud success of my sister. My promotion, my move across the country, it did not even register. My mother turned to me, beaming about Marla. "Olivia, honey, be a dear. Could you cut up the rest of that chicken for the girls? They won't eat the roast, and the floor under the high chair is sticky. Could you wipe that before we sit down?" I looked at my hands, the hands that manage million-dollar clinical trials. I picked up the knife and started cutting the chicken into tiny, perfectly uniform squares. It was always like this. My memory flashed to last Christmas. Marla had a massive holiday order surge. My vacation was spent in my parents' garage, my hands cramping as I affixed hundreds, maybe thousands, of shipping labels to cardboard boxes. My fingertips were raw, stinging with paper cuts. I remember sitting there, the smell of adhesive and cold cardboard in my nose, listening to them celebrate inside while I finished the urgent work. I had used my only week of paid time off the summer before that, not for a beach, not for rest, but to babysit my nieces. Marla and her husband at the time had to attend a networking conference in Florida. I tried to say no once, just once. My mother had pulled me aside, her voice low and disappointed. "Olivia, Marla has 2 children. She needs the help. You do not have a family yet. You're the only one with free time." Free time, my 40-plus hour career, my meticulous management of my own home, My own life, all of it dismissed as free time simply because it did not involve a husband or children. That night, sitting in my own quiet apartment, I decided I was not going to let it be ignored. I opened the family group chat. It was called The Circle. How appropriate. I typed, "Just confirming what I mentioned at lunch. I accepted the promotion and will be moving to Colorado. My official start date in High Mesa is the 15th. I sent it. The phone screen illuminated the dark room. Read by Mom. Read by Dad. Read by Marla. The 3 little dots appeared, then vanished. Silence. I waited, watching the screen. 10 minutes passed, 20, then a new message pinged. My heart jumped. It was from my mother. It was a photo of the leftover apple pie I had baked. The caption read, "Doesn't Aunt Olivia make the best apple pie? The girls loved it." I stared at the picture, my move, my career, my entire life change erased by a dessert. A moment later, a cascade of animated fireworks flooded the chat. Marla. Celebrating the biggest sales day of the quarter. I did not reply. I turned the phone over, the screen going black. The silence in my apartment was absolute. I did not sob. It was a quiet, cold crying that did not make a sound, just hot tears tracking down my face. I was tired of being the reliable, invisible infrastructure of their lives. I opened my laptop. I went to a rental site for High Mesa, Colorado. I found a small, temporary studio apartment. I looked at the pictures of the empty beige room and the small kitchenette. It looked like freedom. I paid the deposit and the first month's rent. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness. It was the adrenaline of cutting a rope. I felt an overwhelming wave of relief, followed immediately by a profound, hollow emptiness. I was finally doing it. I was leaving, and nobody cared. The morning I left, the 15th, was gray and damp. My sedan was packed so tightly I could barely see out the back window. My entire Ohio life was in that car. My phone rang. It was Mom. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice breezy. "I was just calling to see what time you're coming over on Saturday. I thought maybe you could help me clean out the pantry." I stood by my car, the engine running, the exhaust pluming in the cold air. "Mom," I said, "I'm not coming on Saturday. I'm in my car right now. I'm moving. I'm on my way to Colorado." The line was completely silent. I heard her breathe in, a sharp gasp, like I had struck her. "I told you," I said, my voice quiet. "I told everyone at lunch. I put it in the chat." More silence, then a click. She had hung up on me. I got into the driver's seat. I put the car in gear and pulled onto the street. I did not look back. An hour later, somewhere on the interstate, my phone buzzed. A new text from Mom. "What do you mean, you're going to Colorado?" I read the message at a stoplight. The quotation marks around "going to Colorado" felt like an accusation, as if my move was a lie, a flimsy excuse to avoid pantry duty. I turned the phone off and dropped it into the passenger seat. I did not reply. I drove for 2 days. When I arrived in High Mesa, the air was different. It was thin and sharp and clean. The temporary studio was exactly as advertised, beige and empty. It was perfect. I started my new job the following Monday. The work was demanding. The learning curve steep. I was introduced as Ms. Green, the new senior clinical lead. My new colleagues asked about my background, my specialization. They did not ask me to cut up chicken. They did not ask me to wipe floors. They did not even know I made a good apple pie. For the first time in my life, I was just Olivia. I was not the helper. I was not free time. I was just me. It lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of blissful, productive anonymity. Then my phone, which had been silent from the circle since the day I left, lit up. It was Marla, in the group chat. "Hey, just a reminder, Aunt Susan's birthday is this weekend. We're doing the party at Mom's. Olivia, can you come early to help set up the decorations?" I looked at the message. I was in Colorado. They were in Ohio. "Come early." I did not respond. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. "Mom, I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Dad. I let it go. A new text. From Marla. Olivia Mom is asking if you're bringing the dip. Then the calls came faster. A barrage. Mom, Dad, Marla, Mom again. A frantic, digital pounding on my door. They were panicking. Their reliable utility was malfunctioning. I finally let one of the calls from my mother through. Her voice was high-pitched, laced with an anger I knew well. Olivia, why are you being so difficult? Everyone is counting on you. I don't know why you have to be so selfish all of a sudden. Selfish. The word hit me like ice water. Mom, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I am not being selfish. I am being employed. In Colorado. Don't be dramatic, she snapped. I'm not, I said. I told you I was moving. I told you on the 15th. You hung up on me. There was a pause. I heard her fumbling, the narrative shifting in her head as she realized her leverage was gone. Oh, she said. Right. Well, Colorado. She said the word like it was a minor inconvenience, like I had moved to the next town over. Well, she continued, her voice changing, becoming syrupy and familiar, the asking voice. Since you're doing so well with this new job, Marla is just having a terrible time. The business is so slow. We were just wondering if you could help her out. Just a small loan, $5,000 or $10,000, just to get her through. I closed my eyes. I had crossed 3 states, changed my entire life, and I was still right where I started. I was just a function, a provider, a bank. No, I said, and for the second time in 3 weeks, my mother hung up on me. 2 years passed. The silence that followed my no stretched from agonizing days into quiet weeks, then into the steady, productive rhythm of months. High Mesa was no longer a temporary studio. It was home. My work at North Star Biomech consumed me, but in the way a fire consumes fuel to grow brighter, my precision, my refusal to miss details, my reliability. These were assets here, not free services. 18 months after I arrived, I was promoted again, regional clinical manager. My salary almost doubled, pushing me into a bracket I had only dreamed of in Ohio. I was no longer just surviving. I was building. The beige studio was the first thing to go. I bought a home. It was a 2-bedroom condominium in a new building called Juniper Row. The architecture was clean, modern, and it backed up against the foothills. The view from my balcony was an unobstructed panorama of the mountains, and my new ritual was watching the sun burn the peaks pink every morning, coffee in hand. The second bedroom became my dedicated office, a place where I could shut the door and focus, but my kitchen was my sanctuary. It was large, with gleaming quartz countertops, a gas range, and an island. In Ohio, my cooking had been an obligation: simple, fast, child-friendly meals. Here, I cooked for myself. I made complex reductions that took hours. I baked sourdough that required days of patience. I explored flavors that were sharp and challenging. It was nourishment without obligation, creation without demand. The silence of the apartment, so necessary for my healing, eventually felt too absolute. I adopted a dog. He was a miniature poodle, a bundle of intelligent, hypoallergenic energy. I named him Scout, his light. Tapping footsteps on the hardwood floors became the new pulse of my life. He was a living, breathing creature that depended on me. But it was a joyful dependency, a partnership, not a parasitic drain. It was Scout who introduced me to Eli. I was at the dog park on a bright, cold Saturday, watching Scout relentlessly try to engage a stubborn beagle in a game of chase. The beagle's owner, a man with a kind, tired laugh, walked over. "Sorry about him," he said. "He's not much for cardio." His name was Eli Warren. He was 34, and I quickly learned he was the founder of Stride Rehab, a local startup focused on developing smart devices for physical rehabilitation. He was quiet, brilliant, and centered. He listened in a way I had never experienced. He asked about my work in clinical trials, not as a polite prelude to his own topics, but with genuine, detailed curiosity. Our relationship grew slowly, built on long hikes with the dogs and late-night debates about data integrity versus compassionate care. He never pushed, never demanded. He respected the walls I had built, and he waited for me to open the door. For 2 years. My family in Ohio did not exist, and I did not exist to them. The Circle group chat was a digital tomb, muted and unread. My mother, my father, and Marla had vanished from my life after I refused to give them $10,000. The only thread remaining was my Aunt Ruth, my mother's sister. She was the family outlier, the only one who had sent me a text a week after my move, long before my promotion. "Just checking on you. Olivia, I hope you are okay. That was a brave move." We spoke every few months. She never asked for anything. She just asked about my life, my job, my new city, my happiness. Last month, Aunt Ruth flew out for a long weekend. She was the first, and only, member of my family to be invited into my home. The moment she walked in, she put her hand over her mouth. "Oh, Olivia," she whispered, walking over to the window to look at the mountains. "It's just beautiful. You did this. You really did this all by yourself." She admired my kitchen. She asked about the books on my shelf. She insisted on a full tour. "Can I take a few pictures?" she asked, holding up her phone. "Just to remember, I am so proud of you, and I want to show the folks back home how well you're doing." I hesitated. My home was my fortress, and I did not want it breached, not even by photos, but her pride was so genuine, so untainted by envy. "Of course, Aunt Ruth." That night, she posted them to her social media. It was a small, tasteful album, the view from the balcony, a shot of my kitchen island loaded with the brunch we had made, a selfie of us smiling. Her caption floored me. "Visiting my brilliant niece Olivia in her beautiful new Colorado home, so incredibly proud of all her hard work. She deserves every single bit of this happiness." I read the words hard work and deserves over and over. It was the first time anyone in my family had framed my success as something I had earned, rather than a resource they were entitled to. The post, however, was a flare in the dark. The comments began almost immediately. Distant cousins, old neighbors, people I had not spoken to since high school. "Wow, what does a place like that cost in Colorado? Look at that kitchen. Olivia must be doing very well. What exactly is your job title again? North Star must pay a fortune." It felt invasive, like a public audit of my life. Then, the comment that made my stomach turn to ice. My mother. "We are so proud. Our daughter is so successful. She always knows how to land on her feet." Our daughter. We are so proud. As if they had been cheering me on for the last 2 years. As if they had not hung up on me, twice, for refusing to be their personal bank. The audacity of her claim, her attempt to publicly attach herself to my success, was breathtaking. An hour later, a private text message buzzed. It was Aunt Ruth. It was a screenshot from The Circle, the family group chat I still had muted. Aunt Ruth had shared her post there, likely as an olive branch. The replies were stark. Marla. "That place looks expensive. She must be loaded." Dad. 2 bedrooms, all new. Marla. "Someone needs to find out her financials. Seriously. Find out what she makes and what that place is worth. Find out her financials. Not congratulations. Not, I'm happy for her." It was an appraisal, an inventory, a calculation of my liquid value. I was still staring at the screenshot, my blood running cold, when my phone lit up with a new text from Mom. "Hi, sweetie. We miss you so much." I did not reply. My fingers were frozen. 5 minutes later, another text. "Your new home looks just beautiful. Honey, we are so proud of you." The lie was so bald, so perfectly aligned with the screenshot. I felt a wave of nausea. I was trying to decide if I should respond at all when the third text came through, the one that proved the invasion was imminent. We found such a great deal on flights. We just couldn't pass it up. We land tomorrow at noon. Your father, Marla, the girls, and me. We can't wait to see you. It will be just like old times. Tomorrow, at noon. Not, can we visit? Not, are you available? A declaration, an arrival. And the most chilling part, it will be just like old times, a threat. I called Eli, my voice shaking. I read him the texts, from Marla's calculation to my mother's announcement. He was quiet for a long moment. Liv, he said, his voice level and serious. 2 years. They have not spoken to you in 2 years, not since you refused them money. Now, after one social media post about your home, your entire family is flying across the country on less than 24 hours' notice. They are not coming to celebrate you. They are coming to collect. They need something, and they need it badly. I know, I whispered. Do you want me there? He asked. I can be there when they arrive. I can be a buffer. I pictured it. Eli, strong and calm, standing beside me. It was tempting. But this was not his fight. This was my wound, my past, and I could not drag him into the center of it. If I was going to heal, I had to be the one to stitch it closed. No, I said, my voice finding its strength. I have to do this alone. But could you take Scout tonight? I don't want him here. I don't want them near him. I don't want my nieces running at him. Of course, Eli said immediately. He can stay as long as you need. Be careful. Live. After I dropped Scout at Eli's, I returned to my apartment, my sanctuary. It no longer felt like a home. It felt like a fortress about to be besieged. I spent the next 3 hours preparing, not as a host, but as a strategist. I walked through every room. I moved the glass vases and delicate sculptures from the living room to the top shelf of my closet. I took my favorite art books off the coffee table. I scrubbed the gleaming kitchen. Not in welcome, but in defense. Every action was sharp, precise. I was removing anything they could criticize, damage, or use as leverage. This was not tidying. This was securing the scene. But that was only the physical layer. The final layer of protection was the most important. I went to the small, fireproof safe in my office closet. I spun the combination lock and opened it. I took out a single, thick manila envelope. Inside was the closing statement for my condominium, my deed, proof of my sole ownership, my mortgage, my down payment. I added a freshly printed, one-page summary of my asset inventory, my retirement accounts, my investment portfolio, not for them to see, for me to hold, a tangible reminder of what I had built. Alone. Finally, I took out a small, silver digital voice recorder. I held the power button and the screen lit up. The battery was full. I placed the envelope and the recorder on my desk, side by side. I was ready. This time, I would not be the accommodating, invisible daughter. This time, I would be the regional clinical manager, and I would manage this. Exactly at noon the next day. The buzzer for my apartment rang, a harsh, demanding sound in the quiet. I took one last look at my office desk. The manila envelope and the silver recorder were perfectly aligned. I pressed the intercom button. Hello? It's us. We're here? Buzz us in. Honey? My mother's voice was painfully cheerful. Stretched thin over the static, I buzzed them up, and the short wait for the elevator felt like an hour. When my door peephole darkened, I took a deep breath, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door. My mother surged forward first, pulling me into a hug that was less about affection and more about possession. Her arms clamped around me, her cheek pressing hard against mine. Oh, Olivia. Oh, honey, it's so good to see you. We've missed you so much. I stood rigid in her embrace. Hi, Mom. My father was next. He shuffled in behind her, holding a white bakery box. Liv, he mumbled, giving me a one-armed pat. Got you that sour cream coffee cake you. Like, he held it out, I looked at the box. I have never liked sour cream coffee cake. My favorite, since I was a child, was honey cake. He had remembered wrong, or, more likely, he had just grabbed what was convenient. Thanks, Dad. Then came Marla, ushering my two nieces, now 6 and 8, past my legs. Wow, Marla said, her eyes not on me but scanning the entryway, the living room, the view out the balcony window. This is nice, really nice. In, girls? In, my mother trilled, finally releasing me. Go see your aunt's new house. The girls, hyped from the flight and the excitement, took off immediately. They bolted into the living room, running circles around my sofa. Girls, please don't, I started, but my voice was drowned out. One of them immediately grabbed a minimalist ceramic sculpture, one of the few items I had left out from an end table. Look, Mommy, a twisty. Honey, put that down, I said, my voice gentle but firm. Oh, let them play, Marla snapped, not even looking. She was busy inspecting the finish on my kitchen cabinets. They're just kids. It's not a museum. Marla, please tell her to put it down. It's fragile, I said, a little louder. Before Marla could respond, the other niece, trying to get away in a game of tag, slammed her back into the console table by the wall. I had thought the heavy stoneware vase on it was safe. It was not. It wobbled for one agonizing second, and then it toppled, crashing onto the hardwood floor with a sickening, final sound. Silence. Everyone froze. The girl's eyes went wide with terror. I looked at the shattered gray pieces, the spilled water spreading in a dark pool. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Oh, Olivia, I am so sorry. I did not look at her. I did not look at the broken vase. I looked directly at my nieces. My voice came out, and it was not the voice of Aunt Olivia, the helper. It was the voice of the regional clinical manager. Sit down, I said. It was not a request. Both of you, on the sofa. You can read these. I pointed to the books I had preemptively stacked on the coffee table. You do not run in my house. Sit, now. The girls, stunned by a tone they had never heard from me, scrambled to the sofa and sat, their faces pale. The 3 adults stared at me as if I had suddenly grown a second head. Well, my father muttered, shifting his feet. Olivia, my mother said, her voice laced with disapproval. There's no need to be so harsh. They're just fine. I cut her off. I went to the kitchen, grabbed paper towels and a dustpan, and began cleaning up the mess myself. No one offered to help. They just watched me. You've changed, Marla said, her voice a low, suspicious accusation. Yes, I said, sweeping the last of the ceramic dust into the pan. I have. Please, sit down. They settled onto my sofa, a row of unwelcome judges. The girls were silent, watching me. I stayed standing. I would not be sitting with them. So, Marla began, recovering her composure first. The appraisal began. This place must have set you back. What did a 2-bedroom in this building run you? What was your down payment? That's private, Marla. I'm just curious, she pushed. What kind of interest rate did you lock in? I hear they're terrible right now. Did your new boyfriend help with the down payment? The casual mention of Eli, who she had only heard about from Aunt Ruth's post, was the final straw. That's enough, I said. My finances are not up for discussion. Let's stop. Why are you really here? My directness silenced them again. My mother looked at my father. He looked at Marla. Marla looked at the floor. The well-rehearsed performance was about to begin, and I could see my mother steeling herself for the lead role. Olivia, honey, she started, her voice breaking on cue. We wouldn't have just shown up like this, but we are in trouble. We're in real trouble, and you're the only one who can help us. I waited. I did not prompt her. I did not offer a single comforting word. It's Marla, she continued, tears welling up. She's just been working so hard, trying to make her business a success. You know how hard she works. I thought of the Christmas paper cuts. I thought of my vacation spent babysitting. I said nothing. She had a chance to open a real boutique, a physical store. Mom plowed on. A wonderful opportunity in a beautiful historic building. We wanted to support her. So your father and we lent her the money from our retirement. Ah, there it was, the foundation. The business it never took off, Mom said, now dabbing at her eyes. The location was bad. The customers didn't come. She had to close it down after only 8 months. And now, my father picked up, his voice heavy. The landlord is coming after her. They say she broke the lease, and there are fees. They're suing her for $42,000. 42,000, a precise, suffocating number. We don't have it, Olivia, my mother whispered, the tears now flowing freely. We gave her everything. If they garnish our accounts, we have nothing left. We will lose our house. The trap was set. The guilt was laid. The silence in the room was a vacuum, waiting for me to fill it with a solution. And you came here, for what? I asked. Olivia, Marla said, finally speaking up, her voice suddenly strong. All pretense of shame gone. It was the voice of the deal closer. We have a plan. This condo has already appreciated. I checked the public listings. It's a hot market. If you sell it, you'll make a profit. You pay off the $42,000, and you use the rest for whatever. You can just move in with your boyfriend. Eli, right? It's the perfect solution. I stared at her. Sell my home, the home I had bought with my own labor, my own discipline, erase my sanctuary, my safety, my accomplishment, to pay for her failure. And the casual, dismissive move in with your boyfriend as if my relationship, my life, was just a temporary housing solution. You want me to sell my home, I stated. To pay your debt. It's not my debt, Olivia. It's a family problem, Marla shot back, her voice rising. Family is about sharing. It's about helping each other when we're down, God. You've been so lucky. With your fancy job and your new life, you have no idea what real struggle is. Sharing, I repeated. The word tasted like poison. I walked slowly over to my desk, my back to them. I did not pick up the recorder. I did not need it yet. I just rested my hand on the smooth wood. Let's talk about sharing, I said, turning back to face them. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. Let's talk about the Christmas 2 years ago, when I spent 30 hours of my vacation in your garage, sticking labels on your boxes until my fingers bled. While you networked at a party, I wasn't paid. I wasn't even properly thanked. Marla's face tightened. Let's talk about the summer before that, I continued, when I used my only week of paid time off to watch your children, for free, so you could go to a business expo in Florida, which I later saw from photos was a beach resort. I was working, she hissed. I was supposed to be resting, I countered. I have never once asked any of you for a single dollar. I have never asked for a single weekend of your time. I have cooked, I have cleaned, I have babysat, I have packed your boxes. I have been the family helper because my time was free and my life was less. I have shared until I had nothing left for myself, which is why I left. The room was dead quiet. My mother looked horrified. My father looked at his hands. We flew all this way. Olivia, my father said finally, his voice low, the last arrow in their quiver, the guilt of their effort. I met his gaze. I didn't invite you, I said. I walked to my front door. I unlocked the deadbolt, and I pulled it open, letting the bright, indifferent light of the hallway flood the entryway. This visit, I said, is over. They stared at me. Pure, unadulterated shock. The script was gone. I had not read my lines. What? My mother whispered. Olivia, you can't be serious. We just got here. You're kicking us out. I am setting a boundary, I said, my hand on the doorknob. You did not come here to see me. You came here to collect. The answer is no. You cannot have my home. You cannot have my money. And you cannot have my life. Please leave." Marla was the first to move. She shot up from the sofa, her face a mask of purple rage. "You selfish bitch," she spat. "You will regret this." "Get your things, girls," she barked. The girls, who had been watching in terrified silence, ran to get their small backpacks. My mother was weeping openly now, a messy, ugly cry. "How can you do this to your family after everything we've done for you?" "That's the problem, Mom," I said, my voice aching with an old sadness. "You can't even remember what I've done for you." My father wouldn't look at me. He just herded them out the door, a defeated old man. Marla gave me one last look of pure hatred. "This isn't over." Then they were gone. I closed the door. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood. The silence of my apartment was deafening, but this time it was the silence of victory. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. A text from Marla, a text from Mom, a text from Dad. It buzzed again, and again, and again. A relentless, furious swarm. I did not read them. I just watched my screen light up with their rage. The next day, the email arrived. It was from Marla, long and carefully worded, clearly not written by her. It detailed the emotional distress I had caused, the financial peril I was leaving them in, the moral obligation I was failing. It hinted at the consequences of my selfish actions, how my father and mother could lose their home because of my heartlessness. I read it twice. Then I created a new folder in my inbox. I named it For Record. I dragged her email into it. It was the first piece of evidence. A week later, on a gray, rainy afternoon, my mother called. I let it ring 4 times, then answered. I just want to apologize," she stammered, sniffing. "I am sorry for how that all happened. I'm sorry, on your terms, Not, I am sorry for what we did. Not, I am sorry for trying to take your home. It was a non-apology, an attempt to get me back on the hook. I need time, Mom," I said, and hung up. That night, Eli made me dinner at his place. Scout and his beagle were curled up together on the rug. "They're not done," I said, swirling the wine in my glass. "I know," he said, "but you're not the same person you were 2 years ago. You're ready for them this time." He reached across the table and took my hand. "We should talk about setting a date for next year." I looked at our joined hands, marriage, a new family, a real one. "Yes," I said, a small smile forming. "But I'm not walking down the aisle with these old invoices still open. I'm going to close them, for good." I just didn't know how deep that debt truly ran. Later, back in my own apartment, I sat on the balcony, watching the rain over the mountains. Scout came and rested his chin on my leg. The quiet was back, but it felt different. It was not the quiet of peace. It was the silence before the next, much larger. Storm. The storm broke on a Tuesday, not with thunder, but with a digital chime, a text from an unknown number. There was no message, just an image, a screenshot. My blood acidified. It was a group chat, but not the circle. This one was titled, The Circle 2.0. My mother, my father, Marla, and a few other numbers I did not recognize aunts, maybe cousins. Marla's name was at the top of the screenshot. She kicked us out. After we flew all that way, she's sitting on a gold mine and she won't help. My father's reply. She's changed. Marla, she's hard. Then Marla. The line that stopped my breath. We have to force her to sell. She owes this family. Find the leverage and push. Leverage. I stared at the word. This was not a plea for help. This was a strategy. This was an attack. The anonymous sender, I realized, was probably Aunt Ruth, the only one who might have felt a pang of guilt. But she had sent it without comment, a warning, but not a rescue. The second drumbeat came 2 days later, an email, not from my family, but from my own company. The subject line was sterile. Mandatory review, potential conflict of interest. It was from North Star Biomech's legal department. My heart stopped. My work. They wouldn't. They couldn't. The email was polite, corporate, and terrifying. An anonymous submission had been received by the ethics department, alleging a significant conflict of interest regarding my position as regional clinical manager and my close personal and financial relationship with the founder of a local medical device company, Stride Rehab. It alleged I might be compromising North Star trial data or funneling proprietary information to an outside entity. Eli. They were using Eli. I was summoned to a meeting with HR and the company's general counsel for the following afternoon. I did not sleep. I did not panic. I prepared. I am a clinical specialist. I live and breathe data. For the next 12 hours, I assembled my case, my defense, my life. I printed my closing documents for Juniper Row, showing sole, unassisted ownership. I printed my mortgage statements. I printed my bank statements from the time of the purchase. I printed the public incorporation documents for Stride Rehab and the spec sheets for its devices' rehabilitation hardware. Then I printed the active protocols for my own trial's biomechanical data management. There was zero overlap, no shared clients, no shared technology, no shared space. The only connection was me. And that, I realized, was the entire point. They were trying to make me the liability. I walked into the conference room at 2 p.m. Jane, our head of HR, looked uncomfortable. The lawyer, a man I did not know, looked bored. "Olivia, thank you for coming in," Jane began, shuffling papers. "We are required to follow up on all submissions, no matter the source." "I understand," I said. I placed my neatly organized binder on the polished table. The lawyer read from the complaint. It was written in flawless, venomous legalese. It was not Marla's voice. It was too smart. It used terms like fiduciary duty and IP contamination. It was designed to trigger an immediate, serious corporate response. "The allegation," the lawyer said, peering at me over his glasses, "is that your personal partner's company benefits from your managerial insight, that your promotion was accelerated by this relationship." I did not get angry. I did not get defensive. I just opened my binder. "Here," I said, sliding the first document across the table. "This is the public filing for Stride Rehab. It was founded 4 years ago, 2 years before I moved to Colorado. Its focus is mechanical rehabilitation hardware." I slid over the next sheet. "These are my current project protocols. Data integrity for cardiovascular biomechanics. There is no product crossover." And the next, "This is my mortgage, sole ownership, dated 6 months ago." And the next, "These are my performance reviews, dated from my arrival in Ohio to the present." My promotion to senior lead was approved before I ever met Eli Warren. My promotion to regional manager was based on the performance metrics of the Denver Boulder trials, which I'm happy to review with you. I spoke for 10 minutes. The lawyer, who had looked bored, was now sitting up straight. Jane looked profoundly relieved. When I was done, the lawyer closed his own folder. "Ms. Green, your documentation is thorough, more than thorough. It's definitive." "Thank you," I said. "I have one question. How was this complaint delivered?" Jane looked at the lawyer, who shrugged. "It's unusual," she said. "It wasn't sent through the ethics email portal. It was a paper copy, dropped in the lobby submissions box yesterday morning." Dropped, not mailed. That meant the person was local. "May I see the security footage from the lobby?" I asked. Jane hesitated. "That's irregular." "This complaint is an attempt to sabotage my career," I said, my voice steady. "It is a personal attack disguised as a corporate concern. I believe the footage will confirm the malicious, non-corporate nature of the source." The lawyer nodded slowly. "Given the unfounded nature of the claim, and the clear, documented evidence you've provided, I think that's a reasonable request. Jane, let's see the footage." We stood in the small security office. Jane fast-forwarded the timestamp. Lobby box, yesterday, 10:14 a.m. A figure appeared. A man. He was wearing a plain hoodie, the hood pulled low, and a baseball cap. He walked directly to the box, slid a white envelope in, and walked out. "Can you zoom in?" I asked. The image pixelated, but the man's gait was clear. He turned his head toward the door as he left, giving a three-quarter profile. My blood ran cold. It wasn't Marla. It wasn't my father. But I knew him. It was Jason, Marla's ex-husband's brother, my former brother-in-law, a man I had not seen in 5 years, a man who lived in Toledo, Ohio. "Do you recognize him?" Jane asked. "No," I lied. "I don't." I went back to my desk. I called Eli. "They flew him in," I whispered into the phone, my hands shaking. "They flew Jason in from Ohio, just to drop a letter, so it wouldn't be traced to them." Eli was silent, but it was a cold, sharp silence. "No," he said finally. "They didn't. That's what they want you to think. Jason is a decoy. Using him is sloppy. Marla isn't sloppy. She's just vindictive. This letter was too smart. They hired someone to write it, and they hired someone else to drop it. This is orchestrated. Live, and they're using someone you'd recognize to throw you off the trail." "What do I do?" "You fight back with better data," he said. "This is a legal attack. We need to respond legally. I want to hire a civil investigator, someone to find the source of this. Definitively. I'll pay for it." "No," I said. "I'll pay for it. This is my fight. Find me someone." The investigator was a woman named Price, and she was worth every penny. She was fast. It took her less than 24 hours. Eli had been right. It wasn't Jason. Price traced the source. Marla had not hired a lawyer. She had hired a freelancer. Through a deep dive on gig work forums, Price found the postings. The first was a request: write a one-page professional corporate complaint for an ethics violation. Must sound very official. The post included notes: my name, Eli's name, North Star, Stride Rehab, a dozen lies, all spun into corporate jargon. The second gig, posted an hour later: $50 for a simple document drop, must be delivered to a lobby box in High Mesa, will provide file and address. The man in the video was a local university student. Paid $50 for a delivery. The complaint writer was a paralegal in another state. Paid $100 for an hour of his time. Price gave me the full report, complete with archived screenshots of the transactions, the draft notes, and the accounts, which she had linked back to an IP address in my parents' neighborhood. Marla had tried to destroy my life for $150. I took the report to HR. This time, the meeting was just me and Jane. She read the report, her face growing paler with every page. "Olivia, I am appalled," she said. "This is harassment." "Yes," I said. "It is. The company will, of course, be formally closing this complaint as unfounded and malicious," she said, typing. "We will seal this investigation. It will never touch your employee file." "I need a hard copy," I said. "Of the closure memo, signed by you." She printed it, signed it with a firm hand, and slid it to me. "I am so sorry you went through this, Olivia." "Me too," I said. I put the memo into my folder. That night, my phone rang. My mother. Her voice was light, syrupy, as if nothing had happened. "Hi, honey, just calling to see how you are. We were all just thinking about you." I was quiet. The silence was heavy. "I heard," she said, her voice dropping, "that there was some little misunderstanding at your work. Marla mentioned it. We were so worried, but it's all sorted out now. Right? We're just so glad." "We're just so glad." They knew. They had been waiting to see if their bomb had detonated. "It sounds like you should really be more careful, honey," she cooed. "You don't want to make a big deal out of these little things. It just upsets everyone." The gaslighting was so profound it almost made me laugh. "I am safe at my job, Mom," I said, my voice flat. "Oh, good. Well, we just wanted to..." I hung up. I could not go home. My apartment, my sanctuary, felt tainted. I drove. I ended up at the Meridian shelter, the community shelter where I served meals once a month. It was my shift, and I had forgotten. I was late, but I went in. The large hall was filled with the clatter of trays and the low hum of conversation. It smelled like bleach and industrial-strength chili. It was the most comforting, grounding place I could imagine. I put on an apron and got behind the steam table. In the corner of the room, on a low cot, sat an old man. He was thin, with a bushy gray beard, and he was wearing a heavy, worn-out coat despite the warmth of the room. He was just staring at his shoes, and the river of shelter life flowed around him. No one spoke to him. He was invisible. I worked the line, scooping chili, my mind a million miles away. One of the other volunteers, a woman I knew, bumped my shoulder. "You're a million miles away." "Olivia. Rough day." I stopped, the metal ladle in my hand. I looked at the line of tired, hungry faces, people who were truly in peril. The words just spilled out. "My family," I said, my voice low and thick. "They tried to get me fired today. Because I wouldn't give them money. Because I wouldn't sell my home to pay my sister's debts." A few of the regulars in line looked up. They knew about bad families. "I don't even care about the money," I whispered, the confession shocking me. I'm so tired. I'm tired of not being a person. I'm just a function, an ATM. I just wish, for once, they could see me." Across the room, at the word family and money, the old man on the cot lifted his head. He did not just glance. He fixed his eyes on me, a stare so intense I could feel it from across the room. I finished my shift, my hands automatic. As I was hanging up my apron, he approached. He moved silently for an old man. His eyes, up close, were not dull. They were sharp and startlingly blue. "I heard what you said," he said. His voice was a low rumble. "Educated. About your family, the ones who only see you when they need money." I just nodded, pulling my coat on. "They see the resource, not the person," he stated, as if it were a fact of law. "That's how it is." He looked at me, his gaze analytical. "Let me ask you, if there was a way to make them listen. Not just hear you, but truly listen, a way to make them finally see the person, not the paycheck. Would you dare to use it?" The question was bizarre, coming from this man in this place, but his intensity was real. I thought of the HR office. I thought of the freelance posting. I thought of my mother's voice. A small, bitter smile touched my lips. "If justice has a price," I said, "I'm willing to pay it. I'm just done paying for their failures." He nodded slowly, as if I had given the correct answer to a test. "Good." He reached deep into the pocket of his worn coat and pulled out a single, faded business card. The cardstock was thick, expensive, but the corners were soft from years of wear. He pressed it into my hand. "Corbin Hale," he said, "trustee." I looked down at the card. Just those 3 words, Corbin Hale, trustee, no phone number, no email, no address. I looked up to ask what it meant, but he was already turning, shuffling back to his cot in the corner, invisible once more. The business card felt heavy in my pocket, the raised letters of trustee, a strange, abrasive texture against my fingertips. I went home, but I did not sleep. I just stared at the name. Corbin Hale. The next day, I left work at 11:30 a.m. I did not go to my usual lunch spot. I drove straight back to the Meridian shelter. The weekday afternoon shift was quieter. The large hall was mostly empty, sunlight streaming in through the high, dusty windows. He was there. He was in the exact same corner, at the same folding table, as if he had never left. In front of him was a small, plastic cutting board and a single, mealy-looking red apple. He was peeling it with a small paring knife, the blade so dull it looked like he was scraping the skin off rather than slicing it. I walked over, my footsteps echoing slightly on the linoleum. I sat on the bench opposite him. He did not look up, but he stopped peeling. You came back. I don't understand, I said, placing the card on the table between us. Who are you? How did you know my name? What does trustee mean? He set the knife down and pushed the half-peeled apple aside. My name is Corbin Hale. He looked up, and his blue eyes were clear and direct. Your father, Robert, he probably never mentioned me. The world tilted. My father. He is my son, Corbin said, his voice quiet, matter of fact. I left the family when I was 40 years old. Your father was 19. We had a fundamental disagreement about injustice, about what a family owes itself and what it does not. He was angry. I was angry. He took your mother's name, Green. He wanted nothing to do with Hale. We have not spoken in 30 years. Grandfather. The word hung in the air. Unbelievable. This man, in a threadbare coat, in a homeless shelter, was my grandfather. But how? I whispered, my mind racing. How did you know about me? About Marla the money? I know your middle name is Anne, he said, his voice soft. I know your birthday is October 12th, and I know your favorite cake, though you have not had it in years, is honey cake. I stopped breathing. The sour cream cake, my father's mistake, my whole life. I thought I was the one who was confused, who remembered it wrong. How could you possibly know that? Corbin reached into the deep inner pocket of his coat. He did not pull out a wallet. He pulled out a small photograph, so old its corners were soft and white. It was encased in a cracked, yellowed plastic sleeve. He slid it across the table. I picked it up with a shaking hand. It was me. I was tiny, maybe 3 or 4 years old, with a face full of pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. I was holding a puppy. And next to me, looking impossibly young and happy, were my parents. I turned it over. The back had faded blue ink. My mother's perfect cursive. Olivia Ann, age 4, for Grandpa Corbin. She sent me that, he said, his voice rough. She sent me a few. Those first years, before Robert put a stop to it, that was the last one. So you just let us go? I asked, the accusation and the hurt surprising me. You just disappeared. I did not disappear, he said firmly. I watched, from a distance. Public records are a wonderful thing. I saw your school awards. I saw your graduation from Ohio State. I saw your hiring at North Star Biomech. I saw you move to High Mesa. I saw your promotion. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. I did not want to interfere, Olivia. I saw what they were doing to you, how they tied you up with guilt, how they used your competence as a public utility. To appear then would not have been a rescue. It would have been just another complication, another person you had to manage. I was waiting. Waiting for what? For you to be ready, for you to be free of their expectations. Last night, when you were talking, I didn't hear a victim. I heard a woman who was done. You said you were willing to pay for justice. I am here to tell you, you already have. You just need to collect. But you're here, I said, gesturing to the shelter. The cots, the steam tables. He almost smiled. This shelter is not where I live, child. It's where Listen, the people here have no reason to lie. You hear the truth in places like this, the raw, unvarnished truth about the city. He reached down to a simple canvas bag at his feet, a bag I had not noticed before. He pulled from it a large, leather portfolio. It was not worn or old. It was deep, rich brown, beautifully crafted, and bound with a thick strap. He placed it on the table with a soft, heavy thud. The Hale Fund, he said. The trust I established when I left, it's a diversified entity, and one of its many, many holdings is a controlling interest in the commercial real estate partnership that owns the building where your sister Marla opened her boutique. My heart stopped. It did not beat again for a full second. You're her landlord, I whispered. I am the majority owner of her landlord. Yes, he corrected me, his voice precise. And as trustee, I maintain all records. He unfastened the strap and opened the portfolio. It was full of index documents. You believe, he said, that your sister owes $42,000 because her business failed and she broke her lease 8 months in. That's what my mother told me. That is a fraction of the truth, he said. He pulled out a single sheet of paper and slid it to me. This is a humanitarian reduction appeal Marla sent to the property manager 6 months before she closed. She was already failing. She begged for a 50% reduction in rent. Citing family hardship, the manager granted it, on the condition that it would be repaid, with interest. As soon as her business was profitable, she never made a single repayment. He then slid a much thicker document over, stapled in the corner. And this is the real problem. This is the official report from the property management company. The $42,000 is not just back rent. Your sister, in an attempt to cover her losses, illegally subleased the back third of her retail space, he tapped the paper, to an unregistered, unpermitted vape shop. This was a direct violation of Clause 12.3 of her commercial lease, which specifically prohibits co-tenancy of non-approved entities, especially those dealing in regulated substances. The city fined the building owners for an unpermitted tenant. The $42,000 is not a tragic debt. Olivia. It is the sum of her unpaid rent, plus the penalty for the fines she incurred. It wasn't a misfortune. It was fraud. I stared at the black and white report. The room felt hot and small. They had lied. They had not just asked me to cover a debt. They had asked me to pay for a crime, to make me an accomplice to their deceit, and when I had refused, they had tried to destroy my career. I looked up at Corbin. He was watching me, his face impassive, but his eyes were kind. They tried to get me fired, I said, my voice flat. Anonymously. I know, he said. North Star Biomech is also in my portfolio of interests, a small share, but enough to hear the rumbles. The complaint was unfounded and malicious. It's already gone. He leaned in. So, I have a question for you, and I want you to think, do you want rescue money? I can write a check right now. I can make this $42,000 debt disappear. I can make their problems go away. Or, do you want the truth? The offer hung there, a check, a simple, clean, immediate end to the problem. But it wouldn't be an end. It would be a transfer of power. It would make me a benefactor, just like them. It would continue the cycle, just with different money. I thought of the HR office. I thought of the screenshot of the Circle 2.0. I don't want their problems to go away, I said, and my voice was cold. I want them to stop seeing me as their solution. I want them to stop seeing me as a machine. I want them to know that I know exactly what they did. Corbin Hale nodded, a slow, deep expression of approval. That, he said, is justice, not rescue. But justice comes with responsibility. Olivia, this is not a weapon for revenge. We will not do what they did. It is a tool for building boundaries so strong they can never breach them again. What do I do? I propose a test, he said. 3 days, 3 steps, no illegal actions, no public slander, no anonymous attacks. We will use only 3 things: the truth, the contracts, and the light. Are you willing? I looked at the portfolio. I looked at this old man, this stranger who was my blood. Yes, I said. I'm willing. He pushed the heavy leather portfolio across the table. Then take this. Read every page. Understand it. Tomorrow, we begin step 1. I stood up, pulling the portfolio to my chest. It was heavy. It felt like a shield. Corbin, I said, my voice shaking. Why do all of this for me? He went back to his apple, picking up the dull knife. Injustice is a rot, child, he said, not looking up. It gets into the foundation. I left your father to deal with his own. I will not make that mistake with you. I went home. I walked straight to my office and opened the safe. I placed the leather portfolio inside, right next to the silver voice recorder. As I was closing the heavy door, my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. One last thing, the honey cake. I was the one who ordered it for your 3rd birthday. Your parents told me you didn't like it, that you preferred sour cream. So they changed it. They erased it. I stared at the words, even a small, simple childhood memory. It had been a lie to erase him, and in doing so, to erase a part of me. 3 days, 3 steps, the countdown began. Step 1. Financial evidence. I did not just walk into a random law office. The attack on me had been corporate, so my defense would be corporate. I called Mara Givens, the top employment lawyer in High Mesa, the one Eli's company kept on retainer. I paid for a 1-hour consultation with my own money. I sat in her glass-walled office, the leather portfolio on my lap. I'm here for 2 reasons, I said. First, to protect myself from a harassment campaign originating from my family, and second, to prepare for a mediation. Mara was in her 40s, sharp, and wore a minimalist black dress. She listened without interruption as I laid out the last 2 years, the move, the visit, the $42,000 demand, the anonymous complaint to North Star. She took notes, her pen flying. Then, I told her about Corbin Hale. I did not call him my grandfather. I called him a trustee for a fund with a vested interest. Finally, I opened the portfolio. She read the property manager's report on the illegal sublease first. A slow, appreciative smile spread across her face. Well, she said, this isn't a family problem. This is textbook commercial fraud. You said 42,000. That's the number they gave me. I said, and this, she said, tapping the report, is the leverage they gave you. I spent the next hour with her and a paralegal. We did not just read the documents, we weaponized them. Legally, we made certified, notarized copies of everything. The original lease agreement, the rent reduction appeal, the email exchanges promising repayment, the internal report detailing the sublease violation and the subsequent city fines, the screenshots of the freelancer gig postings Price had found. Mara organized them, labeling each one with a crisp, clear sticker, Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit G. This is not a collection of grievances, Olivia, she said, handing me the organized, bound copy. This is a case. You have everything you need to countersue her for slander, harassment, and tortious interference with your employment. If you want to. I don't want to sue, I said. Not yet. I just want to build a wall. This, Mara said, patting the stack, is not a wall. This is a fortress. Step 2. Professional transparency. The next morning, I initiated Step 2. I emailed Jane in HR. Jane, following our recent conversation, I've compiled a formal disclosure for my employee file to ensure full transparency. Could I drop it by? I walked into her office, not as a victim, but as a proactive colleague. I handed her a new, thin folder. Inside was a simple, 1-page memo I had written. It formally disclosed my personal relationship with Eli Warren. Attached to it was the public information on both companies, highlighting the complete lack of operational overlap. At the very bottom, I wrote a single line. I am submitting this voluntary conflict clearance file to preempt any future, external attempts to misrepresent my professional integrity or that of North Star Biomech. Jane read it. She looked up at me, a deep respect in her eyes. This is very thorough, Olivia, proactive. I believe in data integrity, I said. She took out a pen and wrote, Employee initiated, received, on the bottom, adding her signature and the date. She placed it in my permanent file. As far as North Star is concerned, Olivia, she said, this matter is not just closed, it never existed. One front was now secure. Step 3. Illuminating the truth. This was the most important step, Corbin had said. Use the light. My family, especially Marla, lived in the shadows of social media, of private guilt trips and back-channel gossip. My mother's greatest fear was being shamed in front of strangers, so I would not use social media. I would not brawl online. I would use a formal, respected public forum. I went to the city's website, the Juniper Commercial Center, the city-run hub where my condo was, hosted quarterly community dispute reconciliations. It was a free service designed to solve conflicts between tenants, businesses, and residents before they escalated to lawsuits. It was binding, but not punitive. It was, in short, a room full of light. I filled out the form. Disputing parties: Olivia Green, Marla Green, Robert Green, Linda Green. Nature of dispute: ongoing financial demands, personal harassment, and fraudulent misrepresentation of a commercial lease debt originating from the historic Mile property. I requested the city coordinator, a representative from the historic Mile property management, and through a separate private channel, a representative from the Hale Fund. The mediation was set for 3 days later. The invitations, sent on official city letterhead, were emailed to all parties. I was sitting on my balcony when Eli called. He had heard the tension in my voice all week. "So," he said, "the meeting is set. I'm taking the day off. I'll be there. I'll sit in the back." I closed my eyes, the warmth of his loyalty a physical comfort. "No," I said, my voice soft. "I love you for that, but they have always seen me as an attachment, as the helper, as the girlfriend. If I'm ever going to be Olivia to them, I have to be the only person at that table. I have to walk this part alone." He was quiet for a second. "Okay," he said, "but my phone will be on. Call me when it's done." The nights were the hardest. The clock was ticking, and they could feel it. Night 1. A text from Marla, a digital ultimatum. "Mom told me you scheduled some meeting. You are really going to try and shame your own family in public. You have to pick. Olivia, are you family, or are you an outsider?" I stared at the words. The old me would have cried. The old me would have called, trying to smooth it over, to apologize for their actions. I typed one word and sent it. Truth. My phone did not buzz again. Night 2. My mother, a voicemail. Weeping. "Olivia, please, I am begging you, call this off. What will these people think? You are bearing your sister's soul to strangers. This will destroy her. This will destroy us. Don't do this to your sister. Don't be cruel." Her voice was a performance of desperation, a last-ditch effort to trigger my guilt. Don't be cruel, as if their complaint to my job was an act of kindness. I texted her back. "I am not doing anything to her. I am simply presenting the facts of what was done to me. Whoever is responsible for their own actions will be exposed." Silence. Night 3. The night before the mediation. I met Corbin, not at the shelter. He sent a text, a simple address. It was a small, quiet park by the creek. He was on a bench, in his same old coat, but he looked different, sharper. He was holding a single, sealed white envelope. "They will try to break you," he said, his voice a low rumble. "They will not use facts, because facts are not their currency. They will use emotion. They will use history. They will, at some point, use the phrase, 'You owe us. You owe this family. After everything we've done for you.'" He held out the envelope. "This is for that moment. Do not open it before. Let Mara see it, but do not open it. This is not a weapon. This is a mirror." I took the heavy linen envelope. "What is it?" "The truth," he said. "The anonymous sponsor who paid for your private middle school tuition. The academic scholarship that covered your summer science camps. The deposits made every year into your college fund, which you were told was from your parents' savings. It's all there. The history of every dollar the Hale Fund sent you." I was stunned. They told me that was their money." "Yes," he said. "They did. They used my help to buy your loyalty. It is time for you to see the real balance sheet." Mara's instructions were clear. She would be at the meeting, as my counsel. She would hold the envelope, and she would only open it if that specific line of attack was used. I went home. Scout, sensing the electric tension, followed me into my office. I spread my preparations out on my desk. I had printed a timeline on a huge A3 size sheet of paper. It was a clinical specialist's work of art. Date December, event Christmas labeling, 30 hours unpaid labor. Date July, event babysitting, 40 hours PTO used. Date October 15th, event. Move to Colorado, ignored. Date November 3rd, event. Request for 10K, refused. Date 2 years later, event. Uninvited arrival, date 2 days later, event. Anonymous HR complaint filed. Each event was a cold, hard, black and white data point. Scout lay down under the desk, his warm body pressing against my feet. He looked up at me, his dark eyes full of trust. I reached down and stroked his head. "Tomorrow, buddy," I whispered. "We just tell the truth." The clock on my wall ticked. It was 1:17 a.m. I went to bed, and for the first time in weeks, I fell asleep instantly. In the morning, I called Corbin. "Will you be there?" "No," he said. His voice was warm, but firm. "This is not my victory. This is yours. Let them see you first. Then, and only then, will they be ready to see me." Outside, a cold rain began to fall. I heard it tapping on my windows. A steady, relentless drumbeat. The clock was at 0. It was time. The community reconciliation room at the Juniper Center was aggressively neutral. It had beige walls, fluorescent lighting that was too bright, and a large, polished round table designed to imply equality. It felt like an arena. There was no gavel, no judge's bench, just the table. Mara Givens, my lawyer, sat to my left, a stack of bound, labeled exhibits in front of her. Across from us sat my family. Marla was in a sharp blazer, her jaw tight. My mother was pale, twisting her wedding ring. My father simply stared at the wood grain of the table, his hands hidden in his lap. To my right sat Mr. Clark, the representative from the Historic Mile Property Group. Next to him was Ms. Alani, the city-appointed coordinator, a calm woman in her 50s, and at the far end of the arc, quiet and almost invisible, was a young woman with a laptop, listed on the agenda as Ann Bishop, Hale Fund. Ms. Alani opened her file. "Thank you all for attending. This is a non-binding reconciliation, but we are here to find a factual basis for resolution. The goal today is to resolve a financial dispute and harassment claim filed by Ms. Olivia Green, Ms. Marla Green, as the primary respondent. Perhaps you'd like to offer an opening context." Marla leaned forward, her voice practiced, dripping with manufactured reasonableness. "Thank you. It's a terrible misunderstanding. This is a family matter. Olivia is my little sister. Our family is in trouble. Our parents are facing ruin. All we did was ask her for help. She is sitting on a highly appreciated asset," she said, meaning my home. "And we proposed a reasonable, logical solution, that she sell it, help the family that raised her, and she could easily move in with her wealthy boyfriend. It's what family is supposed to do. Instead, she dragged us here, to shame us in front of strangers. She owes us." My mother nodded vigorously at every word. My father sank lower in his chair. "Ms. Alani looked at me. "Ms. Olivia Green." "Thank you," I said. My voice was low and steady. Mara had coached me. "You are not the daughter. You are the plaintiff. Speak like a manager. This is not a family misunderstanding. This is a documented history of financial and professional harassment. I am not here to discuss my feelings. I am here to present a timeline." I took out the large, A3 size sheet of paper and placed it in the center of the table, turning it so they could read it. "This," I said, "is the relationship I pointed to the first entries. Here, we have December, 2 years ago, Christmas, 30-plus hours of my unpaid labor for my sister's business. Here, July, 40 hours of my paid vacation time used for her childcare, for free. Here, my move to Colorado, which was ignored until I refused a request for a $10,000 loan, at which point all communication ceased for 2 years. My mother shifted, uncomfortable. The relationship resumed here, I said, my finger moving to the new entries. The day my personal assets became public on social media, it was followed 1 day later by an uninvited arrival at my home, with the explicit demand that I sell my property to cover a $42,000 debt. It was a request, Marla snapped. We were desperate. Let her finish, Ms. Green, the coordinator said, her voice flat. I refused, I continued. And that is when the harassment began. Mara slid the first bound document to the center. Exhibit A, this is the debt in question. Ms. Alani, if you would ask Mr. Clark to speak to its nature. Ms. Alani looked at the building representative. Mr. Clark, your file indicates a debt of $42,000. Was this simply a case of slow business, as Ms. Marla Green has claimed? Mr. Clark, a man with zero emotional investment, opened his own file. No, it was not. The $42,000 sum is the total of rent arrears plus significant penalties incurred. The Historic Mile Partnership was fined by the city for an unpermitted, unregistered co-tenant at Ms. Marla Green's leased property. My mother looked up, confused. What? What does that mean? It means, Mr. Clark said, his voice monotone, that Ms. Marla Green violated Clause 12.3 of her signed commercial lease by illegally subleasing the back third of her space to an unregistered vape shop. The debt is not a business loss. It is the legal consequence of her actions, which she concealed from us for 3 months. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She looked at Marla. A vape shop, Marla. You told us it was just slow customers. You told us it was the economy. He's lying, Marla said, her face turning white. It was just a small arrangement. We have photographs of the space, the unpermitted signage, and the city violation notice, which we were forced to pay. Mr. Clark said, It is all here. He tapped his file. So, I said into the silence, when I refused to pay for this fraud, the harassment escalated. My family, specifically my sister, then attempted to have me fired from my job. You can't prove that, Marla yelled, her voice getting high. That's slander. Exhibit B, Mara said, sliding over the bound report from the civil investigator. Screenshots of a freelance-for-hire posting, seeking a professional corporate complaint citing my name, my partner's name, and my company, North Star Biomech. Exhibit C, Mara continued, her voice clinical, placing the next document. The IP address logs for the account that posted the job, traced back to the respondent's home neighborhood in Ohio. And finally, Exhibit D, Mara placed the last, single sheet on the stack. It was the memo from North Star, signed by Jane from HR. A formal declaration from my employer, dated last week, stating the complaint was investigated and formally dismissed as unfounded and malicious. My professional standing is secure. My mother was now weeping softly, a low, keening sound. Olivia, this is too much, she whispered. A plea. You're overdoing this. It's family. You're being cruel. Marla shot up from her chair, her professional mask shattering. Her face was a dark, mottled red. You did this. You are trying to ruin me. You think you're so much better than us, with your new house and your rich boyfriend. Ms. Green, please sit down, the coordinator said. No, Marla pointed a shaking finger at me. She has him. She doesn't need that house. She doesn't need that money. She has a safety net. I met her gaze. I did not raise my voice. I did not move. I don't have a rich boyfriend. I have a partner, and I don't have his money. I have my job. I have my house. And I have boundaries. That was the final trigger. Boundaries, she shrieked, the word tearing out of her. You don't get boundaries. Not with us. Not after everything we did for you, after everything we paid for. You have owed this family since you were a child. You owe us. The room went silent. My father winced, closing his eyes. My mother stared, frozen by the raw fury. This was it. The key. The phrase Corbin had promised. Mara Givens looked at me. I gave a single, slow nod. Ms. Alani, Mara said, her voice cutting cleanly through the tension. My client has one final exhibit. It directly addresses Ms. Marla Green's claim that Olivia owes her family for everything they paid for. Mara reached into her black briefcase and pulled out the heavy, sealed linen envelope Corbin had given me. She placed it on the table. My mother stopped crying. She stared at it. What is that? It is a certified ledger, Mara said, from an independent benefactor. She broke the wax seal with her thumb. She pulled out the first page. This is a wire transfer confirmation, dated 12 years ago, for the full year tuition to the Larchmont Private Middle School, addressed to Olivia Green. She pulled out the second. This is a record of payment for 8 consecutive summers of science and technology camps at Ohio State. She pulled out the third and the fourth. And this, she said, is a detailed breakdown of deposits made into Ms. Olivia Green's 529 college fund, totaling over $75,000, which my client was led to believe was from her parents' personal savings. She fanned the pages out on the table. A 12-year history of payments, of investment, of care. It appears, Mara said coolly, that the family Olivia owes is not the one at this table. The silence in the room was absolute. It was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. My father looked like he had been struck. My mother's mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. Marla stared at the papers. What? What is that? That's not real. Mom. Dad, that was your money. You told me that was your savings. My father put his face in his hands. At the end of the table, the quiet young woman, Anne Bishop, finally spoke. It is very real. Ms. Green, she said, her voice clear and kind. I am the administrator for the Hale Fund. She stood up. The fund has been managing these educational investments for Ms. Olivia Green since she was a child. The trustee, Mr. Corbin Hale, wishes to extend his profound apologies for being late. Hale, my father whispered, his voice cracking. He looked up, his face ashen. Corbin Marla, confused and desperate, rounded on me. Who is that? Who paid this? Who is Corbin Hale? I looked at my sister. I looked at my mother, and for the first time, I felt nothing, not anger, not sadness, just distance. He is the person, I said, that this family hasn't asked about or even mentioned in 30 years. Ms. Alani, the coordinator, looked at my timeline. She looked at the sublease report. She looked at the HR memo, and she looked at the Hale Fund ledger. She closed her file. Session concluded, she said, her voice firm. Based on the evidence presented, there is absolutely no basis, legal or moral, to compel Ms. Olivia Green to sell or leverage her personal property. Furthermore, the debt in question is a commercial liability, not a personal one, and was incurred due to fraudulent activity by Ms. Marla Green. She looked at Marla, then at my parents. I strongly advise you to negotiate a repayment plan with the Historic Mile Property Group based on your legal liability, and I strongly advise all of you to cease any and all contact with Ms. Olivia Green. She stood up. The session was over. We left the reconciliation room separately. Mara gave my arm a squeeze. Call me, she said, and left, my family. A stunned, shattered unit, huddled by the elevator, my mother's sobs the only sound. I walked down the hall and took the stairs. The rain had stopped, but the air was cold and damp. I had just reached my car when my phone buzzed. A text from Marla. "I need to see you. Just us. Sister to sister. Please." It was a plea, but it felt like a trap. Part of me, the old, conditioned part, wanted to ignore it, to just go home and lock the door. But the woman who had just sat at that table knew this was incomplete. The masks had been torn off in public, but the real face-to-face had not happened. "Copper Mug Cafe," I texted back. 1 hour. It was a neutral location, brightly lit, always busy. I got there first, ordered a black coffee, and sat at a small table in the corner, my back to the wall. Marla arrived 10 minutes later. She wore the same blazer from the meeting, but she had put on large, dark sunglasses, hiding her eyes even indoors. She looked like someone trying to hold herself together with pins. She sat down, not ordering anything. She took off the sunglasses. Her eyes were red and swollen, but her jaw was set. She was not here to apologize. She was here to negotiate. "Look," she started, her voice a low, rough whisper. That was a mess. You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to bring them into it." She gestured, meaning the building manager, the Hale Fund. I sipped my coffee. I waited. "This is still a family matter," she said, leaning in, trying to create a bubble of conspiracy. "I have a proposal, a family silence agreement. Nobody talks about this, not to Aunt Ruth, not to anyone. It stays in this city. You pay the $42,000. You can pay it directly to the building, and we never talk about this again. We tell the family back home it was all a misunderstanding. It's the only way to fix this. Olivia, for Mom and Dad." She was offering me a deal, a bribe, pay for her crime, and in exchange, she would allow me back into the family's good graces. She would grant me silence. I looked at her, truly looked at her. The desperation was so naked it was pathetic. She had learned nothing. I reached into my bag and pulled out the first document, Exhibit C, the rent reduction appeal. I slid it onto the table. "This," I said, "is your signature, promising to repay the rent you were forgiven, a promise you broke." Her eyes darted to the paper. I reached in and pulled out the next one, Exhibit D, the report on the sublease. "And this," I said, sliding it on top of the first, "is the proof of your fraud, the vape shop, Marla, the one you forgot to mention." Her face went white. "And this," I added, "is the name of Mr. Clark's legal counsel. He told me after the meeting that the Historic Mile Partnership is now actively considering a civil suit against you for fraud and damages, which will not be $42,000. It will be much, much more." Her breath hitched. "You don't need me, Marla," I said, my voice quiet, final. "You don't need a sister. You need a victim. You need someone to pay the bill so you never have to look at what you did. I am not her, not anymore." Her face crumpled. The last mask of the capable, besieged businesswoman fell away, revealing something twisted and raw underneath. "You," she hissed, her voice vibrating with a hatred so old it chilled my blood. "It was always you." "What?" "You were always the cost," she whispered, leaning so far across the table I could smell the stale coffee on her breath. "Back then, if it weren't for you, Mom and Dad would have poured everything they had into me. But it was always, we have to save for Olivia's future. We have to make sure Olivia has the same chances. You, with your scholarships and your special camps." She spat the words like they were poison. "You were the one who cost us. You were the expense. I was just trying to build something for myself, and you couldn't even let me have that. You couldn't even share." I stared at her. The scholarships, the camps, the money that wasn't even theirs. They had resented me for the very help they had taken credit for. They had poisoned Marla against me, making me the scapegoat for their own lies. She had just told me the truth, the real, ugly truth at the bottom of it all. It wasn't about the $42,000. It was that she had always seen me as the one who was in her way. I stood up, my chair scraping back. "You're right," I said. "It was always me. And I'm alone. But Marla—" I looked down at her, a woman so trapped in her own poison she couldn't see the exit. "You just nailed down the exact reason you are." I left her there, staring at the evidence on the table. That night, my phone rang. It was my father. I almost didn't answer. It was the first time he had ever called me. Just him. I let it ring twice, then picked up. "Olivia." His voice was thin, reedy. "Hi, Dad." Silence. I could hear him breathing. A shallow, wet sound. I am so sorry," he whispered. It was not a performance. It was a confession. "I'm sorry. Liv," he said again, his voice cracking. For being silent. For all of it. For your mother. For Marla. I never knew how to—" He trailed off. "Corbin," he finally said, the name sounding like a wound. I haven't heard that name in, God, 30 years. I had a fight with him. He told me I was weak, that I was letting the world, that I wasn't standing up. I told him I didn't want his money or his judgment. I left. I took your mother's name. I never thought he'd— Is he— He couldn't finish. "Is he still alive? Liv?" he asked. Do you want to see him?" The question was an offering, a plea. He was asking me for permission. He was asking me to lead. I thought of the old man on the cot, peeling an apple with a dull knife. "Yes, Dad," I said, my voice thick. "He's alive. I'll see him tomorrow." "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, that's good. That's good." He hung up. The next afternoon, I went back to the Meridian shelter. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. I walked into the main hall. The cot in the corner was empty. The small table was wiped clean. My heart sank. Had he gone? Had it all been a strange, elaborate test? And now he was gone. One of the full-time volunteers was mopping the floor. "Excuse me," I said. "The old man who usually sits in that corner. Corbin." She smiled. "Oh, Mr. Hale. No, he's not in today. He had an appointment. Said it was very important." Of course, he had appointments. He wasn't a resident. He was a trustee. I was turning to leave when the front door of the shelter opened, letting in a shaft of bright, cold afternoon light. It was Corbin, but it wasn't. The beard was neatly trimmed. His gray hair was combed. He was wearing a new, simple, dark wool overcoat. He was not shuffling. He was standing tall, and next to him was the young woman from the meeting, Anne Bishop, holding a briefcase. He saw me. His eyes, the same clear blue, lit up, not with pity, not with sadness, with pride. He walked over, not to the cot, but to one of the tables in the sunlight. "Olivia," he said, his voice the same, but the context was new. "Sit." I sat. Anne Bishop stood quietly beside him. "You did well," he said. "I just told the truth." I said, "That is always the hardest part," he said. He nodded to Anne. She opened her briefcase and placed 2 items on the table in front of me. The first was a simple, gray plastic bank card. It had no name on it. The second was a thick bound document. The cover sheet read, "Draft Last Will and Testament of Corbin Hale." I stared at them. "This is not a reward. Olivia," he said, his voice firm, cutting off any protest I might have had. "I do not pay for justice. This is a tool. This is a temporary bank card, linked to a new account. It has enough in it for you to hire Mara Givens, or any other lawyer you choose, for as long as you need. It is a defense fund." He tapped the will. "And this is a draft. It outlines my intentions. It makes you the future trustee of the Hale Fund, not the beneficiary, the trustee, the one who makes the decisions. His eyes were bright, and he was smiling, a real, warm smile. You have spent your entire life as a resource for other people, he said. I am giving you resources of your own, not so you can hide, but so you can choose, finally, what your own voice sounds like, so you can never be silenced again. I looked at the card. I looked at the will. And then my eyes went to the leather portfolio he had given me, which I was still carrying in my bag. The game had not just changed. I was not even playing the same game as Marla and my parents anymore. They were fighting over $42,000. Corbin had just handed me the keys to the entire board. I sat at the shelter table with Corbin, the gray, unnamed bank card, and the thick, bound draft of his will resting between us. This was the moment of transfer, the rescue. This was the pivot point where I could have simply taken the money, become the new power broker, the benevolent ATM, the old Olivia, the helper, would have accepted it out of a complex sense of duty. But the woman who had just left that reconciliation room saw it as just a different kind of chain. I can't accept these, I said, my voice quiet. I slid the bank card back toward him. Not for me. Corbin's blue eyes were sharp. It is a tool, Olivia, not a prize. I know, I said, pushing it a little farther. And I want to use the tool, but not on me. I'm the regional clinical manager. My salary is good. I have my home. I have my own defense fund. The one I earned. I tapped my chest. You told me this shelter is where you listen. You hear the truth here. So do I. The women who come here, many of them are me. Just without the advantages you gave me, they are trapped by family, by partners, by a system that sees them as a resource. I tapped the draft of the will. The Hale Fund dividends, you want them to go to me. Don't. Make them go here. Let's build something. Let's start a job training program. Right here at Meridian. We can fund certifications. We can teach them how to manage clinical data, how to write code, how to run a balance sheet. You didn't give me a handout. You gave me an education. Let's do that. For them. Corbin was very still. He looked from me to the old linoleum floor, then back. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face, one I had never seen before. A tool, he repeated, nodding. Not a prize. Yes, Olivia. That is a very, very good use of the fund. We will start immediately. He nodded to Anne Bishop, who had been standing silently by. Anne, please make a note. The Meridian Workforce Initiative. He pushed the bank card back to me. You will still take this. This is the operating budget. You are its first director. My next meeting was with Mara Givens. This was not a consultation. I was her employer now. I slid the new gray card across her glass desk. I'm retaining you and the Historic Mile Property Group's legal team for a joint action. This is no longer about defense. This is about building the wall. Mara leaned forward, her eyes bright. I love this play. What's the first move? A cease and desist, I said. Sent to my sister, Marla Green. I want it delivered by a process server. I want it to cover defamation, slander, and tortious interference with my employment. I want her to know, in unmistakable legal terms, that if she ever speaks my name to an employer, a colleague, or a rumor mill again, I will file a civil suit using every piece of evidence from that reconciliation. That's the stick, Mara said, already pulling up a new file on her monitor. What's the carrot? There is no carrot, I said. There is only a non-negotiable path. I don't want to destroy her. I want to contain her, and I want her to pay the debt she actually owes, not the one she asked me for. Mara, in coordination with Mr. Clark's lawyers, drafted a masterpiece. It was a formal settlement offer. The terms were cold, hard, and brilliant. One a binding non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreement. Marla was legally forbidden from contacting my employer or discussing my personal or professional life with anyone, forever. 2. A structured repayment plan for the full $42,000. paid in installments directly to the Historic Mile Property Group. 3. As a sign of community restitution for her fraud, she was required to complete 100 hours of community service at the Meridian Shelter, sorting donations. The final clause was the hammer. If Marla missed a single payment, or if she violated the non-disparagement clause in any way, the entire evidence packet, the sublease fraud, the city fines, the freelancer HR complaint would be immediately unsealed and released to Mr. Clark's legal team, who would then proceed with a public, civil fraud case for the full, unmitigated damages, which they estimated at closer to $100,000. It was a clean, perfect legal cage. She had no choice but to sign. The second wall was for my parents. I went home and wrote an email. It was not emotional. It was not angry. It was an operating manual. Subject: the rules of our future relationship. It was a bulleted list. 1. Our financial lives are, and will remain, separate. There will be no requests for loans, no co-signing, and no discussion of my salary, my assets, or my partner's finances. 2. My home is my private space. Visits will be by invitation only, with significant advance notice, and will take place in public settings until trust can be reestablished. 3. All communication will be scheduled. No more surprise calls or ambush textathons. If you wish to speak, you can send a text request, and we will find a mutually agreeable time. I read it. It was cold. It was clinical. It was exactly what I needed. I hit send. The gossip that I knew had been churning among my extended family died a quiet, sudden death, with no information coming from me, and a legal gag on Marla. The rumor mill had no grain to grind. The fire starved. The first reply to my email, surprisingly, came from my father, a single text. Olivia, can we meet? Just us? And your grandfather? There's a park near me. Elm Vista. Thursday. It was the first time in my life he had ever initiated a plan. Elm Vista Park was cold, the trees skeletal against a gray sky. My father was already there, sitting on a bench, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. Corbin and I walked up the path. He was wearing his good wool coat. My father stood up, his hands visibly shaking. He looked at Corbin, and 30 years of anger, shame, and resentment seemed to collapse. Dad, he whispered. Robert, Corbin said, his voice level. I heard what you did. My father stammered. For Liv, all those years, the money, the school. It was for her, Corbin said. I know. My father's face crumpled, and he began to cry. A silent, ugly cry. I told them it was us. I lied. I was so angry at you for being right, for being strong, that I wanted her to think I was, and I let them feed on her. I did nothing. I'm so sorry. Liv. Corbin stepped forward. He didn't offer empty forgiveness. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an old silver pocket watch. The cover was engraved with a single, elegant monogram. He pressed it into my hand, but he was looking at my father. I'm not rich enough to buy back love, Robert, Corbin said, his voice rough. I don't have that kind of money. I just want the people who are right to be able to stand up straight. My father nodded, wiping his face. I looked at the watch in my palm. I looked at this old man who had watched me from the shadows, who had built a wall of protection around me that my own father had been too weak to provide. I stepped past my father, and I hugged Corbin. I buried my face in the scratchy wool of his coat. It was the first time. Are you okay? I whispered, the words muffled. Is this okay? I felt his arms come around me, strong and sure. I am now. Olivia, he said. I am now. My life clicked back into focus, but the lens was sharper. Eli and I had dinner at his place. So, he said, taking my hand, I'm thinking a small wedding, next fall, up in the mountains, We invite who we want. No obligations, no pressure, just us, the dogs, and a few people who actually love us. I smiled. A real, uncomplicated smile. Yes, I'd like that very much. My mother sent me a text. I read your rules. I want to fix this. I don't know how to love you without owning you. I don't know how to just be. It was the most honest, self-aware thing she had ever said to me. I wrote back. Start by scheduling a 5-minute call. Next Tuesday. On time. A minute later, her reply. Okay, I can do that. Christmas came. For the first time, I bought a tree for my own apartment. It was a tall, beautiful fir. Scout ran circles around it, sniffing the cold pine. I decorated it with lights and ornaments I had chosen. One by one. There were no duty gifts underneath it. No panicked, resentful shopping for my nieces. Just a few. Thoughtful presents for Eli, for Aunt Ruth, and for Corbin. Corbin came to the Meridian shelter for the holiday meal service. He didn't serve. He stood in the back, in his old coat, just watching. I saw him smile as I helped a young woman fill out an intake form for our new job training program. After the meal, I sat with that same group of young women. They were all in their early 20s, all in situations that felt terrifyingly familiar. My mom, one said, she says I'm selfish because I won't co-sign a loan for her new car. My boyfriend, said another, he says I owe him because I live at his place, so he takes my paycheck. I looked at their faces, and I didn't give them money. I told them my story. I told them about boundaries, about contracts, about the power of a single, clinical email. I told them about the word no. They didn't just listen. They took notes. Everything was settling. The walls were holding. My life was finally, truly, my own. Then, a week later, a new email. It was not from my family. It was from a law firm I had never heard of. Venable Croft. Dear Ms. Green, we are the newly retained legal representatives for Ms. Marla Green. We are contacting you regarding her intent to file suit against you and your associates for defamation of character, financial damages, and emotional distress. She was countersuing. She had found a lawyer. The settlement she had signed was about to be challenged. The war was not over. The email from Venable Croft was not a request. It was a declaration of war. Marla, having lost in the private, controlled forum of mediation, had found a lawyer willing to escalate. She was tearing up the settlement she had signed. This time, the meeting was not in a community center. This was a formal, binding judicial arbitration, held in a sterile conference room on the 12th floor of a downtown high-rise. The air was thin. Mr. Venable, Marla's lawyer, was slick, in a suit that looked too expensive for the case. Marla sat beside him, her face pale but set in a mask of practiced victimhood. Across the table, there was just me and Mara Givens, the arbitrator. A retired judge named Ms. Fry looked at the file. Mr. Venable, your client is the plaintiff here. You may begin. Venable stood. Thank you, Ms. Fry. We are here because my client, Ms. Marla Green, has been subjected to a systematic and public campaign of humiliation by her sister, Ms. Olivia Green, a campaign designed to destroy her reputation, her business prospects, and her family relationships. He painted a picture of the city reconciliation meeting as a public circus, a trial by ambush. Ms. Olivia Green, using her significant financial resources and connections, dragged my client into a public forum, threatening her with lawsuits and legal action, causing extreme emotional distress and irreparable damage to her good name. This was a shaming. A public execution. Mara did not stand. She waited until he sat down, letting the silence settle. Ms. Fry, Mara said, her voice calm and clinical. Mr. Venable's entire opening argument is a fantasy. Let us speak to the facts of what he calls a public campaign. She slid the first document across the table. This is the confidentiality agreement from the Juniper Center Reconciliation, signed by Ms. Marla Green, stating it was a private, public mediation. She slid over the next. This is a sworn affidavit from the city coordinator, confirming that all attendees were direct parties to the dispute and that no members of the public were present. Mara leaned forward. Ms. Olivia Green has never once posted about this on social media. She has never spoken to a member of the press. She has never discussed this with her extended family. The only other party she spoke to was her own employer, North Star Biomech. And she only did that. Mara's voice dropped, becoming heavy and cold. Because my client, Ms. Marla Green, filed a malicious, anonymous complaint in an attempt to get her fired. Marla flinched. Venable looked momentarily wrong-footed. Mara was relentless. Since Mr. Venable has decided to relitigate the facts that led to the original settlement, let's review them. We have entered them as exhibits. Exhibit A. The signed commercial lease for the historic mile property, specifically, Clause 12.3, forbidding illegal subleasing. Exhibit B. The property management report, complete with photographs, detailing the unpermitted vape shop Ms. Green was running in her back room, which led to the city fines. Exhibit C. The fraudulent appeal for rent reduction, in which Ms. Green promised to repay funds she never did. And my personal favorite, Exhibit D, Mara said. The complete civil investigator's report. It includes the IP logs and freelancer forum screenshots, proving Ms. Marla Green hired an anonymous party to file the HR complaint against my client. This is not emotional distress. Mr. Venable, this is tortious interference. My client is the victim here, not yours. The arbitrator, Ms. Fry, looked over her glasses at Marla's lawyer. She was not impressed. Mr. Venable, I have reviewed these exhibits. Given that the reputational damage seems to be a direct consequence of your client's own actions, what exactly are you seeking today? Venable adjusted his tie. My client's distress is real. Her family has been torn apart by Ms. Olivia Green's actions. We are seeking financial compensation for the pain, the suffering, and the honor that was taken from her. We are asking for $42,000. The audacity of the number. The exact number of Marla's fraudulent debt hung in the air. And, Venable added, a formal, written apology. Ms. Fry looked at Mara. We reject the demand for $42,000 as retaliatory, absurd, and an abuse of this process, Mara said, her voice sharp. We reject the demand for an apology. We demand this entire claim be dismissed, with prejudice, and further, we demand that the original, signed settlement, the one Ms. Marla Green is attempting to vacate, be affirmed as a binding order of this arbitration. That includes the non-disparagement clause, and the full repayment plan for the actual debt owed to the historic mile property group. The room was silent. Marla's legal maneuvering had hit a brick wall. Her lawyer had no response. All the strategy was gone. All that was left was the raw, ugly truth. Marla suddenly broke. She put her head in her hands, her shoulders shaking, and she began to sob. It was not the performative weeping I had seen from my mother. This was a desperate, ugly, racking cry. You don't understand, she choked out, her voice thick. None of you. You think this is about money? She lifted her head, her face blotchy, her eyes wild. She pointed at me. She had everything. She always had everything. She had the scholarships. She had the camps. She had the new job. The rich boyfriend. She had his money. She gestured to the Hale Fund file. My entire life, she wept. I was just the other one, the one who stayed behind, the shadow, and the one time I needed her to help me, the one time I needed her to be the shadow for just a minute. She destroyed me. She buried me with it. The room was still. Her lawyer looked uncomfortable. his case collapsing into a primal scream. I looked at my sister, the woman who had tried to ruin me, who saw my entire life as an obstacle to her own. I spoke for the first time. My voice was not loud, but it cut through her sobbing. I know what it's like to be a shadow. Marla. She stopped, her breath hitching. I know exactly what it feels like, I continued, my voice quiet. I was the family's shadow for 29 years. I was the helper, the service, the free time. The difference between us is that I didn't try to pull you into the dark with me. I got out. I used the truth. Ms. Fry, the arbitrator, closed the file in front of her. The sound was final. Decision, she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. The plaintiff's claim for damages and apology is dismissed. With prejudice, the original settlement, as signed by both parties, is hereby affirmed and made a binding order of this arbitration. The non-disparagement clause is in full effect. The repayment plan to the Historic Mile Property Group is non-negotiable. Any violation of this order, by either party, will result in immediate and significant legal and financial penalties. She looked at Marla. This is over. We are done here. We stood. Marla was led out of the room by her lawyer, completely broken. I stood there for a moment, the silence of the room thrumming in my ears. It was done. It was really, finally done. In the hallway, my mother was waiting. She was alone, standing by the elevator, twisting her hands. She looked old. She approached me, not to hug, not to cry, but just to stand a few feet away. I'm learning, she whispered, her eyes fixed on the carpet. I'm trying to learn how to love you. How to love you without demanding, without owning. I don't know how, but I'm trying. I looked at her, at this woman I had spent my whole life trying to please. The anger was gone. The resentment was gone. There was just a vast, quiet space. And I'm learning how to forgive, I said, while keeping my boundaries. She nodded, a small, bird-like motion. A 5-minute call. Next Tuesday. I'll be on time. She turned and walked away. It was not a reunion. It was an armistice. Further down the hall, by the large atrium window, 2 men were waiting. Corbin was leaning against the wall, his arms crossed. He was back in his old, worn woolen cap, looking just like the man I had first seen at the shelter. Eli was standing next to him, his hands in his pockets, his face tight with worry. The second he saw me, he relaxed, a wave of relief washing over him. Corbin pushed off the wall and walked over. He didn't hug me. He just reached out and put his hand on my shoulder, a solid, heavy weight. You're standing tall, Olivia, he said, his voice rough. Eli stepped up beside me and took my hand, his grip strong and warm. Let's go home, he said. I nodded, squeezing his hand. I turned and looked out the window, at the vast, clear, painfully bright blue of the high mesa sky. I was breathing. Corbin held out the heavy leather portfolio. I believe this is yours, Madam Trustee. I took it. It felt like it was finally mine. When I opened it later, on top of all the legal documents, all the proof, there was a new, single sheet of paper. It was a handwritten note, in his strong, clear script. Assets don't make a family. Olivia, truth does. My last stop of the day was Mara's office. There was one more document to sign, the founding papers for the new program at the shelter. It's all filed, Mara said, sliding the incorporation papers to me. We just need the official name for the fund. The Meridian Workforce Initiative is the legal name, but the fund itself needs a donor name. I thought of the sour cream cake my father always brought, the one I hated. I thought of the small, simple truth that had been buried for 30 years. I smiled. We'll call it, I said, picking up the pen. The Honey Cake Fund. I signed my name. I walked out of the towering glass building, the portfolio tucked under my arm. The heavy glass doors of the arbitration center swung open, and the bright, cold air of the city hit my face. People were walking by, laughing, heading to lunch, completely unaware of the war that had just ended, of the life that had just been unlocked. But I knew. I pulled the portfolio a little tighter. I stepped across the threshold, from the shadows into the full, blinding light. My silence was over. My voice was, finally, my own. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. Please comment below and let me know where you are listening from. I would love to connect and share our thoughts. Remember to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.